My fellow American. So thank you all for coming. We're very excited today to congratulate Alvin for successfully defending his thesis. I'll just give a brief sort of introduction. I decided to sort of split this up, that when I introduced his talk, I would talk about sort of the work, contributions, and accomplishments he had done, and for this introduction, I would say more personal, what it was like to have him in the lab, and so on. So Alvin arrived in the lab almost exactly 6 years ago in 2006, and it turns out it's easy for us to remember this because it was something like 3 days after our second child was born. So I think I showed up. I don't think I actually managed to meet Alvin that day, but they had the CSAIL student introduction thing, and I showed up with a three-day-old baby strapped to me and went looking for Alvin. And so it's easy to remember this because of that life event. Alvin has also gone through several life events while he's been in our lab, which has been fun to watch. For one thing, some of you may know he became a U.S. citizen during his time in our lab. He came one day and said, "Hey, by the way, I'm gone, next Wednesday or whatever, because I have to go be sworn in." I think that the timing turned out to be non-ideal. It turned out that he was basically a month late or something like that to apply for a grad fellowship that required him to be a citizen. And you might also know that during the time in the lab, Alvin met Patrice and married her. Philip and I both went to the wedding. This was the first and the last, perhaps the last wedding to mention the planetary status of Pluto. Since it's no longer a planet, that may have done to be the last wedding ever to do this. It was also certainly the only wedding I've ever been to that mentioned confidence intervals. Perhaps not the only wedding I've been to that mentioned Lord of the Rings and Princess Bride. And the very fact that Alvin's in-laws approved of these vows, I think, is a good sign that he has chosen the right woman to marry. And that is the sense of sort of the sense of humor that he often brought to being in the lab. And between that and his friendliness and his infectious laugh, which he's still kind of demonstrating for you, it was always a lot of fun to have him in the lab. It was also fun to have him in the lab, at least for me, because we share an interest in food and in cooking. Alvin was often off doing experiments and cooking, almost like Cook's Magazine, trying to cook something in 10 different ways. He tried making cheese in some of his off time in the lab. A number of you have tried his mayonnaise 3 ways at our cooking party. It was always fun to talk to him about this. Alvin was also a lot of fun in his experiments in eating. Ben Ballas wrote to me in preparation for this that he was, one thing that he learned, for better or for worse, from Alvin is, quote, "One can eat almost any collection of items for any meal." And some of the examples, for instance, we have both lived through a fairly long phase in which Alvin seemed to survive purely on dried shiitake mushrooms. There's other meals that Ben reports. There was a loaf of chocolate bread with a raw red bell pepper for lunch one day. There's another day when lunch was an entire red onion sauteed, and another day in which what lunch was olives. just olives. As many of you also know, yesterday was a life event for both of us, if you will. It was my first PhD student to graduate, and I presume Alvin's, shall we say, first PhD. And to commemorate that and to thank Alvin for how nice it's been to have him in the lab, it's a tradition in our lab to get a gift for the students that has somewhat of a nerdy component that has something to do with the research that the student has been working on. And so if you could please open that. And I was to say a little bit of the relevance of both of these. I gave you a topological bubble.
Yeah. There we go.
You are this isn't like kids' birthday parties. No one's going to make you say your girlfriend's name with each other wrapping paper.
It's just a weird thing that I have to do this a certain way. There we go. Okay.
So this first present for Alvin has two associations with Alvin. One is that, as many of you may know, a lot of what Alvin has had to do for his PhD thesis is draw either with MATLAB or by hand a lot of sort of cooling regions arrayed in these sort of flower-like patterns, and we thought it might be useful for him to have a kit for doing that. This is sort of the upscale, nerdy version of Spirograph, for those of you who can't see it. And the other reason that I thought this would be a good gift is that one of the things Philip and I learned at the party before Alvin's wedding is that he did not know what a Spirograph was. And so, here.
Okay.
We're going to go through the same algorithm. The second gift is sort of to reference some of the things that Alvin has thought about as possibly being explained by peripheral vision mechanisms. Maybe you could show it and say what it is. So these are coasters, and there actually are actual functioning mazes you can do with a little metal ball to try to...
Awesome.
So anyhow, so thank you, and please everyone join me in congratulating Alvin on getting his PhD. And now, as you might have noticed, there is food, and there's cake, and there's going to be beverages to drink, and please enjoy yourself. Oh, and, sorry, maybe I jumped in wrong. Alvin might want to say a few words.
Many, many, many thanks for everyone for coming to this event here, and many, many thanks to Ruth for being a wonderful advisor and helping me throughout all this process and all these lab events. And also thanks to Ted for creating a wonderful lab experience as well. And also to all my lab members for helping through all these various discussions and for in general making this lab a wonderful experience. Thank you.